Steve, we talked about ROI earlier, return on investment. And really this comes into metrics. Another way to think about it is a feedback loop. Let me take you from high tech to low tech so we can see all of the different ways that metrics can be applied to what we're doing. The highest level that I generally think about is Google Analytics. Most people that run a website or have one are familiar with the concept. If they're not, let me go through it a little bit, even if you're not. Google Analytics is a free Google tool. If you have a website, you can get an account, and it provides a unique code. And you can have that code embedded into your website. You can do it yourself. You can provide it to your webmaster, and they can put it in the code of your website. The information that you gather when you use Google Analytics gives you some metrics such as this. How many times your page was visited today? How many pages were visited overall? The average amount of time somebody is on your website. The exit point or the bounce page. This one's always really interesting. What page is it that somebody leaves from? I think this is a really important metric because if you have a particularly bad page on your site or ineffective, people leaving from that page is going to show you a priority of yours to maybe tune that page. Also, what languages they speak, what countries they're from, where they got to your site from, who's linking to your site and how they got there. Also, what operating systems they're using, what kind of a device they're using. All of this is tremendously useful information. What keywords they entered into a search engine to get there as well. This is fabulous. And what's important about looking at your metrics is letting not only your staff know, your team, and yourself know, well, this is going to show you what's important. This is going to show you what people care about, what they're looking at, and what they don't care about. This ties into SWOT because we're going to be able to see what we may be prioritizing or seeing as a strength may be turned on its head. Those numbers are going to tell us what our viewers are looking for and what's important. So if we use Google Analytics at the top of the scale, we're moving down. I create custom metric reports for my clients. I recommend a custom report because if your goal and your priorities for your business are drastically different than mine, then our metric reports are going to need to look different. I start with what tools are you using? Your website, using Google Analytics. If you're using Facebook, they have Insights, Yelp, TripAdvisor, Instagram, Flickr, Ustream, YouTube. All of these tools have their own metrics.
Oh, they have metrics? I was thinking it was just comments that people left.
They have comments. That's a little bit further down the tech level of this scale. That's a little bit more qualitative, takes a little bit more human interpretation. So you're not going to get a hard number based on a positive comment on a YouTube video. But they do all provide individual metrics. So how many views each video received, or this month, how many views your channel received, how many subscribers you have. So that's something that you're going to build into your custom report as well. Then counting more qualitative, such as comments, how many you received, good or bad. Then let's go all the way to email marketing as an example. There are click-throughs, correct? But you also get phone calls. Every time I send out email marketing, I get responses back, so you can count how many responses you received by email. You can count how many phone calls you received, how many clients are ready to book. These are metrics that you can build in. So your own report is going to change from month to month. And this is normal. This is expected, and it should change because as you have a better view of your product and the tools that you're using, the more laser focused the information that you're going to request from your metrics is going to be.
I suppose that if you have sales promotions in other media or other promotions that you might plan throughout the year, then you'd see results or hopefully see results in these?
Absolutely. Everything we do in our business has its own metrics, but because we're now demanding ROI from social media, the great thing is this is rippling backward into more of our classic techniques, and we're now looking with a more focused concentration on all of the tools we're using, whether or not it's a telephone, if it's regular email, if it's face-to-face communications. All of the same metrics that we look at for our social media and interactive internet tools can be applied to the more classic techniques we use as well.
But what are the more meaningful metrics? I mean, there sounds like a lot of data.
I think it really boils down to what converts to dollars. What did you do that created a sale? My favorite ROI question is, my favorite piece of data is when somebody pays me money, how did they get there? Plain and simple. Now, the beautiful and difficult part about social media is that because you can be in so many places at one time, it can be difficult for your customers to draw to one point why they've used your services. If you can, draw as many secondary and further out points that allow you to understand what you're doing that's effective. Now, these metrics will really let you see what you're doing on your priority list that is being effective. And your priority list may shift as a result, and that's really why you're tracking your numbers, to tell you if your original estimation of what you're doing is on point or if it needs to be adjusted.
You mentioned feedback loops. Are there other forms of information besides these quantitative metrics?
Well, I really like to talk to people face to face. What do you like about my service? What's important to you? What if there was one thing I could do differently? What could I do? So this could be a traditional cold digital survey, or it can also be face-to-face, which really, this boils down to customer service. Are you listening? Are you paying attention to the needs of your customers? Talking to your employees as well, providing the information to them that's coming out in these reports. Because if you have a large team, but only one person is tracking these metrics, you really do need to share that information with everybody on the team. Why that happens, this can bring it right into a SWOT exercise version 2, 3, or 4, is that when you let them know what the most viewed page on your website is, or what the most popular status update that you have from Facebook, when you let your team know what those metrics are, they could come up with great new opportunities, ideas that you can use in the future that can be applied to your strategy.
Are these metrics private? I mean, can my competitors find out what my metrics are?
Some of them are visible. There are some sites that allow you to, as an example, Website Grader is a tool that allows you to view your website. Other people can use that same tool. Clout, as an example, is a tool that measures your reputation, your reach. This is something that you can look at your competition to see what their clout score is. Of course, it's questionable how solid those numbers are, what they really, really mean, but there's a variety of tools that allow you to see what your competition is doing or what others in your industry are doing and get a general idea of where you fall on the scale.
So you get metrics on your competition.
You can. You're not going to get a perfect report the way you would for yourself because much of it is proprietary information, but you can get a very solid idea.
Interesting. How hard is it to learn how to do these metrics and gather them?
Let's use Facebook as an example. I'll walk you through what I would do with Facebook. Open up your Facebook page and it has View Your Insights. In this Insights section, you open it up, you take a look at it. The numbers are very clear. They're really user-friendly. They give you graphs. They give you examples. So depending on who I'm working with, depending on how number-savvy they are, I may just take a screen cap of the beautiful graph that they give me, or I may export the CSV or Excel spreadsheet database that they give me that provides me with an arm's length of information. Again, in that custom report, what's important to you? I don't need 17 columns of data. Maybe I only need 5. So depending on who I need to provide that information to, sometimes I give them hard numbers and sometimes I give them an easy to see graph. It's actually quite easy to look at those metrics and absorb them.
Well, what's an aha moment like when someone looks at a metric and says, aha, that happened because of this? What does that generally look like?
Generally, let's say, let me give you an example that happened in my business. I look at my metrics report as part of my process list. Your daily list that you're looking at to see how work is done, monthly as well. When you do inventory, you close your books. I have built into my monthly process list doing my metrics. Once a month, I get a 30-day snapshot of all of my numbers. One month, I was looking at a spike on my website traffic. And I hadn't done anything. I looked at my Twitter feed. I looked at my Facebook wall. I looked at everything around that date, a day before, that day, a day after, to see what had caused that spike. I don't think anybody mentioned me on the radio. I hadn't appeared on TV. I was trying to think of what could have caused that spike. This is actually kind of funny. A client emailed me, and she happens to be a well-known celebrity. And I said, off the cuff, did you possibly mention me somewhere recently? She said, as a matter of fact, I did. I said, was it on February 17th? And she said it was. She said she had spoken about me to a huge audience of people, and the people had run out of that conference hall, and everybody apparently had looked me up. I had 3 times the amount of traffic on that one day than any normal day.
So the message there is to cultivate celebrity friends. Okay.
The message is that you can investigate where those spikes are coming from. What did you do? What did somebody else do? Can you find that information out? But those spikes you can relay back to some specific action that you took.
And the spikes hopefully would then lead to some kind of throughput, some
Absolutely.
sort of deals, but that's still unclear as to whether that happened or not.
You really have to look at your own behavior and see what you've done. Sometimes there are outside factors that affect that, but if you are in traditional press, if you're in the traditional media, that can affect your social media numbers, absolutely. So again, traditional and new media go very well together. I don't think either can exist on their own at this point. They do have to be folded in together.
Now, obviously, we're talking about a plan here that a small business person would do, and they're going to be allocating resources and money and time. So how can metrics tell them what they're doing that's not worthwhile so they can maybe eliminate something?
Let's say you, on your Twitter account as an example, and you've prioritized the kind of information that you want to share. A retweet is a metric number. When somebody sends out your tweet to their audience, seeing what kind of retweets you get, you think this is solid information and then everybody wants it. Nobody seems to care you didn't get a single retweet. So it's going to let you know consistently, if you're watching and you're categorizing that type of information, that if nobody is interested and it's not being shared, then maybe you're wrong. Your estimation, your original estimation is incorrect. That information is not valuable. Unfortunately, this can be a narcissistic moment where we think we know what our audience wants. Looking at those metrics is really going to let us know what we think, if it's true or not.
How long should you hang in there? I mean, if you're tweeting and nobody's responding, I mean, obviously you're going to be watching your metrics. And how long would it take you to realize that either Twitter's not right for my audience or I'm not doing it right?
Well, there really should be some engagement, and it's not just about broadcasting, it's about communication. Social media is about conversation and communication. So if nobody is communicating with you, my first question would be, what are you doing that's not hitting? Are you communicating with other people? Are you speaking directly to them? Are you engaging? There are ways to use interactive internet technologies that aren't proactive necessarily, but communicative. Let's say you are investigating blogs and the style of blog, because your blog isn't getting any traffic. Why is your blog not getting any traffic? In the process of you looking at other successful blogs, taking notes on their style, their frequency, their content, all of these different kinds of features, what you can do as a secondary task is to comment on that blog. This is actually tremendously important, and most people don't think about it. Why? Because social media is run by humans. There's a human element. So if someone writes a wonderful blog that you respect and are researching and read on a regular basis, if you take the time not only to say thanks, great blog, but tell them why. Discuss with them their points, what you're going to do with that information, what you're going to share about it. Creating a human relationship is the final piece here. And if you're just promoting and pushing and publishing, yet not interacting, those numbers really aren't going to come through the way you want them to.
So you're using your metrics kind of as a coach, an online coach, to kind of indicate where you should be spending more time.
It helps herd you.
Okay. Now how long should it take to put together a metrics report at the end of the month?
A metrics report, depending, of course, on how much data you're reviewing, putting it together at the very beginning can take, I would say, a half hour to an hour. That's an estimation. But to actually run that report at the end of every month, depending on how many channels you're using, can be as short as 5 minutes and as long as an hour.